The name of my talk is First Things First, the order of order. And we all started out as love, and we still are love. And first things first is we have mother and father, right? And today we're celebrating and honoring our fathers. We thank you, each and every one of you here and out there on Facebook and in the world, for saying yes, for saying yes. We are so grateful. So the power of order, it is the power of organization, the power of sequence, the power of balance, and the power to adjust. And it is symbolized by olive green, and the place in our body is in the belly button, because that's where we all started, with the umbilical cord. And that's where it all began, as we began to form. And the apostle is James, son of Alphaeus. And in Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 to 2, it describes order. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to harvest what has been planted. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, the father of Unity, we shall say, he also discovered the 12 powers, and he says order is the first law of the universe. Indeed, there can be no universe unless its various parts are kept in perfect harmony. So if you think about it, we have sunrises followed by sunsets. And winter gives way to spring every year. That's order. An apple seed grows into an apple tree. A human birth occurs 9 months after conception. The honeycomb in a bee's nest to create honey. There's order in that. The migration of animals and monarch butterflies. I never knew the process of a butterfly. They start out as an egg, and then they go to a caterpillar, and then the chrysalis, and then the butterfly. But that butterfly only lives for 2 months. And there are 3 generations of that. But the 4th generation of the butterfly lasts 6 months, because it has to fly down to Mexico to have their eggs and be able to come back up. Such amazing order. But the thing is, because of us humans, we went ahead and built up that part of Mexico where they would live, in the milk thistle. So now only 10% of our monarch butterflies are being reborn. So because finally we woke up and realized the disorder that we created, we're starting to plant more milk thistle, so that more and more butterflies can come back. But I was pretty amazed about that. I never knew. But that's just instinctive order that is within our environment. That's one little example of it, and it's all around us. Spirals that are in shells. A spiral is significant of perpetual movement, signifying continuous growth and vitality. The sense of order in our natural world is symbolic of the sense of order within us, which is symbolic of the spiritual order within us. Things always change and evolve as we do. And our life is built around order. As humans, we can have underdeveloped order, which means we cannot create balance in our life, which means we have a messy house or we have a messy mind. We can't seem to get things in order. We have lots of disorganizations. We redo things over and over again to get projects done. We can also go to the other end of the spectrum and have overdeveloped order, which is fastidious and obsessive. There is a spot for everything, and everything needs to be in its spot. That's somebody who's got an overdeveloped order. Now, think about the messiest place in your home. The place that you said, I want to get that in order. The thought of that brings in the power of imagination and the power of order. But then once you actually start going in there and finding a special place for everything that's in that pile of stuff, you actually feel the sense of order within your body. You feel the cleansing. You feel the organization helping you to feel the flow in your life. We use order when we're arranging ingredients for a recipe, doing a project, getting a degree, even getting up and picking out our clothes for the day. That's when we use order. Now, divine order. Divine order is always happening. It cannot not happen. The thing is, there are things in life that happen when we question whether or not it's divine order, like when a child dies before a parent, or when a shooter goes in and kills 14 kindergarten children as well as some of their teachers, when a limb must be severed to spare the rest of the body, when a lover leaves inexplicably, or when we get laid off or fired. We don't think of this as divine order. We think of it as something else, and many of us say, oh, it's God's will. And I want to read something about that. Order, like so many of the other abilities, is often misunderstood. People sometimes get confused and use the phrase divine order, meaning divine will, divine predetermination, or divine proclamation. In divine order is often used in the traditional sense, meaning there is a God outside of us ordering everything that happens in the universe, including our daily lives. The idea is that there is a set order for our lives and that all of our activities are governed by it. This misunderstanding of divine order leaves one feeling resigned rather than empowered. Understood in a different and more empowering way, divine order is the orderly sequence by which everything comes into existence. Mind, idea, expression. Everyone, we do mean everyone, uses this sequence. We cannot not use it. First, there is an idea or thought in mind. We experience it. And then we go about bringing the thought or idea into physical existence, or not. In the case of cleaning up a messy room, you're either going to do it or you don't, but you start thinking about it. The idea comes from the one mind, you think about it, and then you put yourself into action to make it happen. So a lot of times we use God's will as often the explanation for inexplicable circumstances. And I want to encourage you not to do that anymore. Know that God is order. Whether we like it or not, it's in divine order. Divine order is not a correction of some unhappy condition, but an integrated arrangement of energy in a pattern, sequence, or method. When things in life happen that we cannot understand, but they are in divine order because they cannot not be in divine order, we activate and assert a rightful power of order. Several years ago, a friend of mine took his life, and I was devastated. And I was also raised Catholic, and in the Catholic tradition, that's a sin. You know, he was going to go to hell. And I didn't know how to wrap my mind around that because I didn't believe that anymore, but I didn't know what to believe. And I went to Sean about it, and he said, know that God is with him. God cannot be with him when he went through that process. That was divine order for him. That was his way of his highest good in that moment. It may not feel good for us, we may not like it, but that was his divine order. And it gave me such relief. I was still sad, but it helped. It helped me to know that he wasn't, going to that place. It helped me to know that he wasn't alone. And it was just one of those teaching moments for me that I'll never forget, that I'll hold in my heart and know that no matter what's going on in my life, God is a part of it. Because I am God and you are God and God is in everything. We can't get away with it. That's one of our principles, right? Of our 5 principles. So we claim the spiritual power of order by using and activating organization, adjustment, and evolution. Organization is the framework, the structure, the pattern, the sequence in the heart of all of our lives. Think about what is the first sign of spring. It's part of the organization of spring is we see crocuses, we see daffodils, we see forsythias. We know, okay, something is coming next. What is the next bunch of flowers that are going to come out, right? Because that's the part of order. Order underlines, and I don't know where Kenneth is, but he can attest to this. Order underlies music as well as mathematics. There is order to that. We use the spiritual power of order in our Trinity, like I said earlier, the mind, idea, manifestation. Mind or divine mind, the one mind, that's where all ideas exist. It's like the fish in the sea. They just keep on coming. But when we latch on to one of those ideas, we make it our own. It becomes in our mind the idea that we want to bring into manifestation. And then we do what we need to do to bring it into manifestation. But that's the order of it. And it will never not be that order. Then we have adjustment, which is the second feature of order. Our body is always searching for homeostasis. It's natural. It's what our body wants. It wants to be balanced. That's what homeostasis means, constantly in balance. And spiritually, adjustment means it's our power to modify our thoughts. Similar to what Sean helped me do, to think about the suicide differently so that I can find spiritual peace. We shift our awareness to adapt to a new spiritual understanding. And practices, I've said this every time I've spoken, you guys might be tired of it, but it's the truth. Practices such as meditation, journaling, releasing and saying affirmations are the steps that help us with adjustment. And then we also have to balance activity with stillness. So if we think about our calendars, right? Our calendars are filled with stuff to do. But we have to balance that with meditation and stillness. If we don't, what happens? Yeah, we can get overwhelmed, we can get burnt out, we can get sick. And moment by moment, we know what we need to do for ourselves, but we have to tap in and check it out and ask and be willing to listen and be willing to do what comes through. And that's the order. First things first, go within. We have motion, we have rest. One is just as important as the other. We can't just sit and meditate all day, every day, right? That would be a waste of a life. So we have to go into action also. The adjusting power of order is our ability to shift our attention to the other priority. So when we're in meditation, when we come out of meditation, we get to say, okay, what's mine to do now? What's mine to do next? And our adjusting ability is inherent and is born of our power of wisdom. Our power of wisdom, we know what we need moment by moment, whether it is activity or stillness, structure or flexibility, tradition or innovation, dependence or independence upon others. Our ability to adjust is a rich spiritual resource from which we draw to bolster an affirmative outlook on life. Activating our power to adjust, we literally change our energy, shift our awareness, uplift our attitude, and transform our life. Another example in my life is I have a sister who's got PTSD, and she makes choices that scare me all the time. Right now, she's not speaking to me, but I still hear about what's going on in her life, and I'm scared a lot for her and the choices that she's making. One of the choices is she now lives in Florida in case she has to be homeless. Well, where I come from, whatever we think about, we create. So I'm like, oh no, she's thinking about being homeless. But she's in a place where she can be homeless and not have to worry about the cold. Anyway, let's not go there. But the point is, I have to, when I brought this up to Sean, he reminds me that she's on her journey. That God is in her life. And I don't have to worry about her. I don't have to be afraid for her. I don't have to be scared. I just get to love her from afar because for me, that's what's best, quite frankly. I don't like that. I want to be there helping her, but she doesn't want my help. So guess what? It's best this way. And I have to remember and part of it also is helping me to remember my purpose here, my spiritual, what ought to be done by me. What ought to be done by me is continue to go within and ask for guidance. Seek the kingdom first. How would God see this? How would Jesus see this? How would Christ see this? God sees her as just as amazing as he sees me and you and you and you. He doesn't distinguish, he's with her. And it really helps me to remember that. So Charles Fillmore says, the divine idea of order is the idea of adjustment. And as this is established in a person's thought, his or her mind and affairs will be at one with universal harmony. Oh, doesn't that sound lovely? We just have to adjust a little bit here and there. And the final aspect of order is evolution. So for many years, I've always looked at people who had the same job for many, many years, and they kept climbing up the corporate ladder. And I felt a little less than them because I didn't do that. I couldn't stick with something that long. And today, I'm studying to be a licensed Unity teacher and then on to a minister. Those are going to be my 5th and 6th careers, which is like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? But what I realized from doing this talk is that's my evolution. That was like such a gift to me. That's the way I'm evolving. That's the way I'm learning to do what ought to be done by me. And it's such a relief to not look at myself as, oh, I couldn't do the corporate thing. I was there for 13 years. That was enough, quite frankly. I had sneakers on by the end. I had to run out of there. I was so done. Evolution is the power of order demonstrated as development, progress, and growth. And I have to say, I have to give myself that credit because I do grow. I do expand all the time. I love learning and changing. And it's the one thing my friend Janine, who I've known since I was 14, always says, Theresa, one thing about you is you're always open to change. You're always open for it. I am. You can't stop it. So why not go with it, right? It's also referred to in the spiritual world as unfolding or transformation. Evolution moves in the direction of expansion and is inherent. The idea of evolution or harmonious expansion is a divine idea flowing from source or one mind. Our urge to evolve comes from our catching that divine idea and cooperating with it, co-creating with it, right, Steve? Co-creating with that divine idea that comes through. From the one mind to our human mind, from our human mind to our being, this is the power of evolution. Charles Fillmore says, evolution is the result of the development of ideas of mind. What we are is the result of the evolution of our consciousness, and our consciousness is the result of the seed ideas sown in our mind. Therefore, spiritual evolution is the unfolding of the Spirit of God to expression. It is the development achieved by individuals working under spiritual law. So let's talk a little bit about the order of healing. Reverend Darlene Strickland says, reveal what must be revealed and heal what must be healed. Now this could be applied to ourselves, within and without. It could be applied to our community. It could be applied to the world, right? Reveal what must be revealed and heal what must be healed. There's a blog by a woman, she calls herself the Velveteen Rabbi. She says, when a wound is infected, ignoring it or pretending that it isn't there doesn't help. The only thing to do is grit one's teeth and clean out the wound, and maybe suture it gently so that it will close on its own again. Nobody likes to hurt, but first things first. We have to go into our brokenness and our wounds and clean them out. Because if we don't face our brokenness, we cannot sweep away the shards and begin to rebuild. Heal what needs to be healed. What is ours to do? What is yours to do? What is the disorder within you that needs to be cleaned up a little bit? This week I invite you to ask yourselves that question. What is mine to do? There's a podcast called On Being Podcast with Krista Tippett, and she was interviewing a woman named Sherry Maples, and it was all about Sherry finding out what was hers to do. And Sherry served for 25 years in the justice system in Wisconsin. She was an assistant attorney general. She also served on the police department of Madison, the city of Madison, Wisconsin, for 25 years. And while she was a policewoman, she decided to take a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh. So her first day there, she's sitting there and he's talking about peace and passivity and all the passiveness. And she says, I can't stay here. I carry a gun every day. Every day I go into work knowing I might have to kill somebody. So she gets up and walks out. Well, one of the Buddhist nuns sees her and follows her out and asks, they have this conversation. And the gist of the conversation was, who do we want carrying guns other than people who have been trained in mindfulness? So she went back and she finished and became a very serious student of mindfulness and eventually became an ordained Dharma teacher in the Buddhist tradition. She decided maybe one day that she would start teaching other cops mindfulness. But she said she really didn't think that they would take it seriously. But then she also said, if they're going to listen, they're only going to listen to it from another cop. Somebody who knows the responsibility of holding a gun, somebody who knows what it's like to know when you go in to work that you might be brought into a very violent situation at any point that day. So she decided to start, and it became her life's work. It became her calling. She created the Center for Mindfulness and Justice. What ought to be done by her, she listened and she did it. In preparing this talk, I realized what ought to be done by me is, at this point, continue to go in and continue to ask myself, seek the kingdom first. What is mine to do to heal within me? I know there's a lot to do as far as political disorder and environmental disorder and racial disorder, but I have to fix me first before I can go out there and help. And also look at how I can serve this community, how we can serve together the disorder and become more orderly. It's all a part of it. Father Richard Rohr, he's a Franciscan priest and peace activist, compares our need for order to building a stable into which Christ can be born. It is not about what kind of stable you build, whether yours is better than somebody else's. It's about having the space where the power and the fire and the light of Christ can come into being through each and every one of us. We create order, and make room for the powerful and even chaotic birth of God's creativity within us. So what is it wanting to be born in and through you? You know, God, Sean talks about God being good, orderly direction. And we have to be careful because order can sometimes box us in. Right? We can't be too boxed in. You know, there's some birds that people like to catch and put in cages. But if they're migrating birds, there's a certain time of year the birds start banging up against the side of the cages because their intuition is to migrate. So we don't want to build that box of order too small for us. We want to make sure that it's big enough that we can spread our wings. So we want to be able to look deep into our wounds, but we also want to be able to open up and look at everything. Desmond Tutu, he won a Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to end apartheid in South Africa. He says, we are only the light bulbs, and our job is just stay screwed in. We are only the light bulbs. We only have to stay screwed in so that God's light has the connection it needs for us to shine. So God's light has the connection it needs for us to shine, because each and every one of us is a light of God, right? Order is giving our soul the necessary time, attention, and stillness it needs so we can cooperate with the Creator's orderly and creative design for our lives. It's not about crawling into a protective space so that we don't have to get hurt or run away from disorder, run away from the mess. That's not what it's about. Order is simply stepping back far enough so we can regain perspective, or stepping in close enough so we can tend to our wounds. So your homework this week. I invite you to meditate on the power of order. Now, if you want help with that, Wednesday night we're having a class, and it's about zeal and order. This week, go in and ask, where do I need to create more order? What do I need to do so I can tune into the innate sense of direction that God has given me? Do I need to build some kind of structure that will enable Spirit of God to be born in you and has somewhere to land? Do you need to build a meditation practice or a journaling practice? Do you need to screw yourself in a little tighter so that the electricity or your light can just beam out through you? Where do you have to loosen your sense of order so you are free to fly in that good, orderly direction of life? Finally, where in the world around you is there disorder that needs to be healed to make the path safe for you and others? Are you willing to grit your teeth and clean out the wound? The power of order is our innate gift. It is the balance and harmony we need to find that good orderly direction and follow it.